Welcome back to Caracast, the podcast from Carasoft, the trusted government IT solutions provider. Subscribe to get the latest technology updates in the public sector. I'm Corey Baumgartner, your host from the Carasoft production team. On behalf of Okta, we would like to welcome you to today's podcast, focused around combating cyber threats in government. Matthew Belavko, Supervisory Special Agent at the FBI, Stephen Henry, Director of Auditing at the Office of the Chief Inspector General of Florida, Major Brian Wablinger, Defensive Cyber Operations Element Chief at the Joint Force Headquarters of the Florida Army National Guard, and Jason Ruby, Senior Solutions Engineer at Okta, will discuss how agencies are tackling cyber threats to ensure that citizens' personal information and critical infrastructure are adequately protected, recoverable, and secured in the event of a breach.
And, cybersecurity is of the foremost concern for all IT professionals and is at the forefront of all network and IT operations. Now, this is something that all levels of governments agree on, all levels of governments. So our guests are going to share with us their experiences with information technology security and how they're tackling cybersecurity challenges to ensure that citizens' personal information, priceless historical records, and critical infrastructures are adequately protected and recoverable, most importantly, recoverable and secured in the event of a breach. So first off, from the Executive Office of the Governor, we're being joined by Stephen Henry, and he's the Director of Audit. We're also pleased to welcome Matthew Belavko, a supervisory special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation out of Jacksonville. And rounding our government speakers is Major Brian Wablinger, a U.S. Army, with the Florida Department of Military Affairs. Now, from the private sector, we have Jason Ruby, who's a senior solutions engineer from Okta. Folks, welcome. It's great to have you here. It's going to be a fantastic time. And let's get started by just telling us a little bit more about yourselves, each other. So, Stephen, let's start with you. Would you share a few notes about yourself and the Governor's Director of Audit?
Yes, sir. Good to be here. Good to look out over so many friendly faces as well. Nice to see representation from our offices of Inspector General. My name is Stephen Henry. I am from Tallahassee by way of New Jersey. Like a lot of Floridians come down from New Jersey. We like 80 degrees in February or whatever. So that's how I got here. Let's see, after going through secondary school here, I went to the University of Florida and graduated there in 1998. Go Gators. Yes. Yeah. Go Gators. Yeah. Yes.
There's some conflict coming in here.
Yeah. My family were all Knowles, but they converted. They were good football years down there for UF. So I was converted to a Gator there, came back here and went to law school and graduated in 2001 from Florida State University. What do we do though in the offices of Inspector General? So I'm so lucky I can look out. I see my previous boss, Director Barron, she left, but another boss of mine, Director Cindy Heffron, out in the audience. I couldn't have better bosses in life. But what do we do in Office of Inspector General? We try to add value and improve agency operations and activities. So that is essentially what we do. And a lot of what we focus on is risk and internal control. So that's sort of the hallmark of what we do. So I happen to be sitting in the back with this LaQuanda Colston or whatever. She took my job. I used to work at the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. So I was joking that I was going to talk my entire time here about what she does, right? And focus on her. So what goes into being an internal auditor there? And Director Heffron, she again was my boss there at DBPR. So understanding the agency and activities and operation. I know in the last presentation, people talked about foodborne illnesses, the agency that licenses, the licensing and regulation. So if you had a bad burger last night, the place that you call is DBPR. If you wanted to go to a boxing event today, DBPR. If you're looking to see, this hotel, in fact, is regulated by DBPR. So what goes into internal audit is that Ms. Colston has to be, if not an expert, she has to understand the risks that go into licensing that. If you take an elevator at the Capitol where I work, and you go up to that 22nd floor where we're having an emergency, licensed by DBPR. So already what she has to do is understand the risks and controls that are inherent in the agency that she works for. And in addition to that, sort of she's only one person. So her boss might say, where are we going to focus our audit resources this year? Right? Where are we going to look at this? Are we going to look at their law enforcement division that does things like use of force? So beyond that, we have added some cybersecurity responsibilities, and we'll talk about that more throughout the presentation. Okay. But anyway, that a little bit about what we do there. So.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Not that you're busy at all, right? So Matthew, you've definitely, we were talking, you've definitely had an interesting life at the FBI. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're up to now in Jacksonville?
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Belofko, and I'm a special agent with the FBI. I'm currently serving as a supervisory special agent here in Jacksonville, Florida, covering over cyber intrusion matters. Before joining the FBI, I was served in the United States Marine Corps, Iraq, and I was a police officer in Daytona Beach, Florida, a city you guys may know. And I did that for 7 years before joining the FBI. I joined the FBI in 2009. I started in the Philadelphia field office, and I was located at the State College Resident Agency. While out there, I worked a variety of violations to include counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and cyber-related matters. After a few years there, I took a transfer to El Paso, Texas, to go to the El Paso field office, where I continued to work CI and cyber-related matters. While in El Paso, I was also the coordinator for the InfraGard chapter. I'm sure many of you are aware of InfraGard, the private and public partnership with the US government. So I was the coordinator for that. In 2017, I took a supervisor position within FBI headquarters. So I was a program manager at Cyber Division, where I managed several APT threats emanating from Asia. And then in October of last year, I came down here to Jacksonville. The Jacksonville office is a great office to be in. We cover 40 counties, the entire northern portion of Florida. So from Jacksonville down to Daytona Beach, all the way out to the Panhandle. And throughout that area, we have 7 resident agencies that help us cover. My cyber squad, I have agents in several of the RAs, so we're handling all cyber intrusion related matters across here.
That's going to be great. It's going to be great to have you on a panel, especially as we get into it. We can talk about how we're sharing information across federal as well as state, local, regional.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. So Brian, what's your life story and how is duty with the Florida Department of Military Affairs?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Major Brian Weiblinger. Really happy to be here. So I've been in the Florida Guards since 2004. That's actually what brought me to Florida. So I'm a transplant. My wife's a Gator. That's what brought me down to Florida. So that's why I say go Gators. I went to a nerd school. We didn't have a football team. So, it was in Rochester, New York. So as you can imagine, that's another reason I came to Florida. Snow is way behind me, never going back. So I've been in Florida Guard for 18 years, various positions, as you can imagine. I'm a major. I've been with the defensive cyber operations element for the past 5 years. I'm the team chief. We're based out of St. Augustine, Florida, very small team. Our focus is to do, we have a portion where we're supposed to defend the DODIN, if you will, for Florida. The reality is, because we're weekend warriors, we more do things on, let's say, an audit standpoint, and we kind of assist. But our big mission is to do partnership. So I've had the unfortunate, training to go to, I put on training in Belize last year for 2 weeks. I've been to Barbados to help with cyber. I mean, it's horrible. You can imagine, staying in nice hotels. I'm an Army guy. I'm used to sleeping on the floor in a moldy tent. So, it's kind of an upgrade over the lifestyle I'm used to. So, but it's been really great. In the past, we did a lot of partnership with the governments, state agencies. I would love to get back to that because we'll talk more about incident response and all that later. But I really think that that's where we can help with training and just helping people test their plans. As I mentioned, I am a traditional guardsman. So that means I have a real job too. I work for Microsoft. I just started. I'm a cloud solution architect for them. I love the cloud. I've been working the cloud for the last 7 or actually more than 7 years, forever, it seems like now. So I have a very opinionated stance when it comes to digital transformation. And I really liked on the first panel, the things that were being shared, because I lived all that stuff you were talking about. So
That's
Again,
fantastic.
very excited to be here.
That's fantastic. It'll be great to hear your perspective on a lot of things, both from the military as well as your civilian background. Super. Jason, Okta, you.
Hey, everybody, Jason Ruby, Senior Solutions Engineer with Okta. Recently joined Okta from 10 years at VMware in the end user computing space.
Mm.
So this is really focused on providing users access to any application from any device from anywhere. So a lot of what I did was around mobile device management and identity and helping customers enable a remote workforce, right? The challenges of moving to the cloud, but also supporting things like BYOD, corporate owned devices that are personally enabled, and making sure you can get secure access to applications, right? And a lot of that comes down to zero trust, which is why I joined Okta. So identity is the front door to zero trust, and Okta is the leading identity and zero trust enablement platform.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, what a great panel we have here. It's going to be really interesting to talk to you guys and sharing information back and forth. Now, I'll let you know again, I'm going to address the questions initially to one of you, but if any of you have an idea, jump right in. I mean, butt in and say, hey, wait a minute, I want to say something about that too. Feel free to do so. It really opens things up and makes it a lot more fun that way. So let's go for it. So Stephen, what are some of the standout innovative policy and best practice changes affecting cyber resiliency that you've seen over the past couple of years?
Great. Yes, thanks. And as the major was talking, I should first sort of let you know, I was telling the folks in the office and the folks up here, like what I was doing today. And then I was showing the rest of the folks on the panel, and both my wife, my coworker said, how'd you get on that panel, Stephen? and really the reason is because our chief inspector general, she is at a separate training in Guam right now. So she keeps posting pictures on the beach and things like that. So, right. And again,
Guam's another one of those places like, wow.
Right. I know, little different there. And I should say, we referenced football earlier, that her and I know Inspector General Hall spoke in an earlier session. They're like the Patrick Mahomes, right? And I am, if I'm Chad Henne, I'm probably overinflating myself. So the offense maybe doesn't run as efficiently with the backup here, but I will will do my best here. So innovative policy and best practices involving cyber resiliency. And she of course can speak more eloquently about that, but we'll try to have the backup do what we can do here. Again, it's hard to argue that any sector faces greater challenges involving cybersecurity strategy than those of us in the public sector. Talked a little bit about what we do. I know recently had a presentation with a vendor that sort of described a little bit about what sort of internal audit and those of us in compliance do, that if you think of some of the folks that people are doing, that they are creating the house, the cybersecurity house, with the foundation, with the doors and things like that, that what we do is essentially, we are the home inspectors, right? We are making sure that that house is livable, that you don't have mold, you don't have rot, you don't have ghosts, whatever is the risks that you need. So, and home inspection is also something else that they license. Home inspectors is something else they license over at DBPR. So, right, shout out again to Ms. Colston there. So the greatest risk in our environment, of course, now is cybersecurity, and it's been that way for a long time, since at least the early 90s. In 2021, the Florida legislature passed a law that made state agency IGs responsible for building a specific cybersecurity audit plan into our annual work plan. That annual work plan, again, describes sort of what we do and what our priorities are throughout the year. Are we going to focus on this? Or are we going to focus on that? So when that happened, the Chief Inspector General convened a work group with some of the experts like Inspector General Hall and others like that, and how we would accomplish that throughout the enterprise for the 22 agencies that agreed to participate. So as part of that, and again, usually each of these agencies work independently and separately and focus on things. Again, what they do at DBPR might be very different than what Inspector General Hall does at the Department of Management Services. So what happened was some of the experts came up with a audit work program that each of the 22 agencies would have sort of the blueprint about how we would do our home inspection, skills that we may not have already possessed. Again, cybersecurity is sort of a not a new venture for us, but having the expertise to know what we need to be looking for was, of course, the challenge. So how did they do that? They had 3 days of training. They sort of set forth Again, among the topics they picked that first year was the NIST standard of security continuous monitoring. And they said, these are the specific things that one needs to look at to accomplish what we need to do. Provided training on that, 3 days of it, which we rarely get 3 days of training on how to do what we're doing. They had bi-weekly calls as to what questions does one have? How can we accomplish this? What can we do? So that was building our cyber resiliency as an enterprise, really from the ground up. Of course, again, we don't often have the wish, we don't have the time, the budget, the folks that we want. The Chief Inspector General uses the phrase that we have to sort of be MacGyver. I know you use the Semper Gumby. We have to be MacGyver or Gumby. MacGyver, for those of you who are not as old as I am, was a show from the 80s or whatever. So, right? So a lot of chewing gum and duct tape is how we have to come up and do what we have to do. That's how we sometimes have to fight the bad guy. And we don't necessarily have the budget to do that. So what else did we do? And I know I want to reserve some time for the rest of the exciting folks on the panel, that we were given a $1 million grant from the Florida legislature to try to accomplish our mission. So the first thing that she did was to send our enterprise, the 300 staff members, that includes the folks in audit like myself, our investigators and others, to a 2-day intro to cybersecurity course. Then we partnered with other leaders like ISACA. At the time in 2021, when we started, we only had 8 folks that were certified as CISAs, like Inspector General Hall. She was one of the 8. Since then, we have doubled that. Also, the certified in government's enterprise IT training. My boss, Inspector General Heffred, she recently passed that exam. Those are really high-end exams to do. So every day we feel like we're getting better and better at building our environment and becoming more cyber resilient. Again, we had things that we had to know and learn in our agencies about the operations and activities, but building the cybersecurity expertise to become more cyber resilient across our audit enterprise, our Inspector General enterprise, audits, investigators, et cetera, that was sort of what we did. So
But it seems like the Inspector General is really, I mean, we heard earlier today too, you've really built a strong foundation and base, and you're building off of that, which is good news. That's great. So Matthew, according to the FBI, what are the top cyber threats currently?
Cyber itself is one of our top priorities. You know, if anybody in here goes to FBI.gov, they could go and look, and cyber threats are our number 2 and 3 priorities for the FBI. So whether it's, you know, nation state adversaries that are attacking our systems, or cyber criminals that are looking to do BECs and ransomware attacks against companies in the US, these are the things that the FBI is currently looking at. Over the past couple of years, we've seen how these actors are getting more sophisticated. The attacks are getting, bigger in scale. We have, Hafnium, SolarWinds, Colonial Pipeline. I mean, these all show you the investment that our adversaries are putting into creating tools, creating methods and new techniques to come at our systems. We've also noticed over the past several years that ransomware attacks are on a rise. There are more and more variants every day. There just seems to be a new variant, and the ransom demands are going up. Not only that, if we can make it worse, right now, these ransomware groups are not only encrypting the data, they are stealing data from networks and then extorting companies to keep asking for additional ransomware payments in order to keep them from releasing that data publicly. So that's the trend that we're seeing. But, don't fear, the US government, like I said, treats this very, very seriously. You may have all heard in the news last week, the takedown of the Hive ransomware group, right? So this was an investigation that the FBI and other US government entities were looking into. Hive was a prolific ransomware as a service organization. They had victimized over 1,500 entities across the United States and around the world. So some of the actions that we took is, like, through our investigation, we were able to eventually penetrate the Hive network, obtain inside information about what they were doing, and grab their encryption key. We used the encryption key to provide that to victims of the Hive ransomware group, allowing them to decrypt their data without paying a ransom. That saved approximately $325 million worth of ransom payments over the past 6 months. In addition, last month, we took action with foreign partners in Germany and the Netherlands to seize all of their servers, take down their websites, and basically, disrupt this entire ransomware group. So hopefully we won't be hearing from the Hive ransomware group in the near future.
That's incredible. That's great. That's great news. So Brian, when planning for cyber resiliency, okay, so what are some best practices organizations should adapt to help avoid various cyber intrusions or mitigating cyber breaches when they occur? I mean, we hear ransomware, either you've been breached or you're going to be breached. Resiliency is what it's all about. What do you think?
I was going to say that you had mentioned that earlier. It's not a matter of if, but when, right? And so it's kind of sobering to kind of think about that. And we're going to talk a little bit about zero trust a little later, but one of the tenets is assume breach. So, you start with assuming I'm already breached. And I know, again, that's kind of scary to hear because nobody wants to get hacked, right? If you're a blue team person or you're defending your network, you don't want your boss coming to you and say, hey, why are we breached? I mean, you failed, you didn't do your job. But the reality is, as Matt kind of talked about, I mean, we're dealing with your, nation state actors that they have time and money. And, there's a statement, if you are targeted, you will be breached, right? Because we have a huge surface area to defend. So take that breach mindset. Obviously, we want to prevent intrusions, and we need to, figure out how we can shift to detect and respond. How do we kind of narrow that gap so that when we do get breached, we can find it and we can respond quickly? So how might you start? Well, one, maybe put yourself in the shoes of an attacker. Like think about, well, what is it that I have that an attacker is interested in, right? If you do that, you understand what your critical assets are. You understand your data estate, right? For us, I think data is really the lifeblood of what we really need to protect, right? Citizen data, customer data, whatever you want to call it. When we understand that, then we can maybe start putting the right controls in place to kind of mitigate those risks. Additionally, you need to have an incident response plan. Now, it's not enough just to have a plan on paper. Most people do have a plan, but then when you say, hey, when's the last time you've actually exercised that plan? They're like, oh, we've never done that. The first time you execute it is not the time of an incident. That's a horrible time. In the military, we're very infamous for writing plans, right? I mean, you can go throughout history and look at all the plans, like D-Day is a great example. No plan survives first contact. That is a truth, but it's not a wasted plan, right? If you spent the time doing the planning and you practice the plan and you rehearse the plan, when you hit that first contact, and yes, the plan might fall apart a little bit, you're going to be a little more agile and a little more adaptable because people kind of are in that mindset. They know what's going on, right? And obviously there's going to be a lot of emotion going on when an attack happens. And again, we talked about ransomware, right? And data, obviously we need to make sure we have some sort of backup plan in place. And in the same regards to incident response plans, if you have a backup solution, but you've never tested it, that's probably a bad idea to test it when you've actually been hit with a ransomware attack, because you might find, unfortunately, that backup plan didn't work, right? Also evaluate, like, well, how are we backing up? Well, we have one backup. Okay. The adage is if you have one backup, you have zero backups, right? Because, one backup solution will fail. So, and then the last thing, I mean, again, there's a lot of things we can enumerate here. We also have to look at who is our front line when it comes to this. Our front line is our users. There's a statement out there now, and it's true. Identity is your perimeter, right? And when we say identity is your perimeter, we're talking about users. So we need to focus on our users. We need to make sure they're empowered and educated to understand that they have a critical part in helping with our cyber defense, right? We need to train them why, hey, don't just click on random links, right? When they're sent to you. Hey, you have MFA, and everybody's really familiar with, like, hopefully push-based MFA, super convenient. But if you get a random push-based MFA on your phone, you might want to raise an eyebrow on that, right? Because that's not phishing. You're actually being phished, right? That's a phishing form on MFA, and it's actually super popular now to do that. So those are some things, and I'm sure the panelists can add other things and everybody else here could enumerate more, but that's kind of my take.
Those are great points. You brought up the fact that DOD and the DOD has war plans and they have op plans that are out there that done, and they regularly practice them at war gaming. And it's not a game; it's actually war planning, and it's planning for a situation that's out there. They enact it and they do it. We have to do the same thing with our cyber plans and resiliency and recovery plans. Red teaming, blue teaming. They're doing that in a cyber situation. What a great way to work your backup plans. Have somebody, a red team, throw in a fake virus into your system and see if your backups are actually working to retrieve it and do it. So we're kind of getting that area. Jason, we're going to turn to you. Now, a critical component of cyber resiliency is the accountability of everything attaching to the network. I mean, everything attaching to the network. So how do we inventory, track, monitor, update, and secure devices that our teams utilize for performance of their jobs, both internal and external to our network perimeters?
Yeah, so I guess that's the big question, right? Is there's no more network perimeter, right? If there is, it's a legacy system. Some organizations still need to, for example, I'll back up for a second, right? So if you have laptops and you have devices, traditionally you would manage those with on-prem solutions. And I won't pick on Microsoft, it's very common, right? So Active Directory, Group Policy, SCCM, System Center Operations Manager. You would manage these things traditionally, and you would get that visibility and accountability for, just say, your Windows systems, right? And then other point solutions like Jamf to handle your MacBooks. But everybody is becoming remote. COVID really kind of pushed everybody over the edge that wasn't already doing a work from anywhere approach, right? But some organizations will still, and I still see this, right? So some organizations will still bring their traffic back in through a VPN, essentially to inspect it and then send it back out to Office 365, maybe back in, right? And then there's additional costs acquired by that, for the bandwidth and things like that. But really the performance is really poor and you're still using those traditional on-prem tools, right? So mobile device management solutions have come a long way. It used to be just iPhones and Android devices. Now the concept is unified endpoint management. So there are platforms out there that can manage any type of device. They can manage point of sale devices alongside with your Windows device, your MacBooks, everything in one pane of glass, right? And so along with that, you have the ability to manage these devices over the air, right? So you use things like content delivery networks that can deliver applications and data to users no matter where they're at, but also deliver policies down to them. So group policy will be a thing of the past, and these policies will be managed from the cloud. So that's a really efficient way to do that. No longer do these machines have to be domain joined to get the same type of security posture. But you can get some additional efficiencies with that too. When you combine that with things like EDR solutions like CrowdStrike, Carbon Black, that can do zero-day attack prevention with things like machine learning, right? So these cloud-based security agents that can run on these machines that can aggregate data from across the internet and say, okay, this behavior is abnormal. It's been detected over here. Now I can apply that remediation across my fleet of devices.
Out to the edge as far as you want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and again, you're eliminating some of these on-prem legacy tools that can't keep up with that stuff, right? And then you have the concept of baselines for your devices too. You can use things like CIS baselines. So you can harden your devices by just using industry best practices, right? So once you've done that, then there's other automation pieces you can do too. People have brought up API integrations and things like that. That's spot on, that these integrations between these cloud service providers can chain actions together to really eliminate a lot of the manual stuff that needs to be done, right? So I can have a baseline for all my devices that say you need to meet these criteria, and it's automatically updated if something falls out of compliance, automatically done, no human intervention. If there's malware, something detected, you can lock that machine down, quarantine it automatically, and then have notifications that go to ServiceNow, create incidents, and do all these things without human intervention, right?
Yeah.
So you're really eliminating that human error piece of that. So that's kind of the place to get to with endpoints, right? And then you can tie all that into a SIM or a SOAR for your logging and accountability.
You also have the at the application level, the segmentation and micro segmentation that will add in there and help that, and the least privilege, taking into account what you just said, that and least privilege, okay, in a zero trust environment. Basically, we have the capability now. It's a matter of implementing it. But we can't sit back and say we're happy, because as soon as we think that we've got a solution, the adversaries are going to come up with something to beat that solution also. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is once you're able to generate all these signals from the user's device and where they're moving around, you can also do things like DLP and traffic inspection at the cloud edge with like SASE solutions, secure
Right,
access service edge. You can see everything that user is doing. And if they're doing risky behavior, they're going to gambling sites and things like that, you can increase the risk level of that user, right? It's all tied back, all these signals aggregate around that user, and then you can make access decisions on their applications based on that. The major was saying it's about protecting the data.
Mhm.
So we can do all these things to secure the devices, but if we can't associate that with a specific user and make an access decision based on that, then we're really not securing that data. We secure the device, we
Right.
haven't made an access decision to the
And
application.
if you get corrupt data into the system, you've just messed up everything.
Yep.
Outstanding. Thank you. Great discussion. Great answer. So let's go with everybody. Okay. And this next question is going to be for all of you guys to pop in on. So how can agencies from state, regional, local level in Florida, even education or whatever, okay, how can they share lessons learned on securing and the best practices for securing data? So just information sharing at all levels. Is there a platform? I know CISA does it in a lot of cases for federal government and things of that nature. And they share also with state, local, regional. Is there something in Florida that we do? Anybody?
Yeah, I think that's the issue, is that I think there are information sharing organizations, but do we actually participate, right?
Mhm.
Because I think some of the concern is like, and Matt might be able to speak to it, he's got information that he may not be able to share with me. I have information that I might not be able to share with him. And it's like, well, what can I share? So I think sometimes people are a little shy about it, because it's like, well, what can I share? Can I release this information?
But in
So-
most cases, we've broken those barriers. Well, in a lot of cases, we've broken those barriers, especially at the sensitive but unclassified level,
Right.
law enforcement level. We have RISNet, Milnet, HISN, and others that now have single sign-on even.
Yep.
That we put in place back in 2016. I did the agreement with that, and that's increased a lot. So are we seeing that improvement of information sharing throughout the state and federal? Do you guys see anything?
I mean, in my experience, so far down here, I've seen a decent amount of sharing.
Mhm.
I know we have participation in several fusion centers
Right.
across Florida to assist with that information sharing. In addition, some of the things I try and get my agents to do is get out there and really talk to the companies within our areas. This was something I was going to discuss a little bit after, but having that relationship established with the FBI, one, ensures that if there is an incident, the company knows to contact us early. That's going to make all the difference in trying to get us involved quickly, rather than waiting where there could be evidence lost and different things like that. And there could be added value of having the FBI there, that I'll explain a little bit after. In addition to having those relationships, we often push out various products that the FBI and CISA co-author, or just the FBI pushes out. So we have flash messages that the FBI pushes out, private industry notifications. We have the joint CSAs, cybersecurity awareness, and that are joint typically with CISA, sometimes with NSA. And these documents are a wealth of information. And, I've known a lot of companies that have been able to use them, take the IOCs or indicators that are in there, implement some new practices within their organization, and help them defend or deter attacks. And I've also seen it where the companies take this information, they may check something out, they may identify something on their network and share that back with their contacts at the FBI. This is the type of share as you go relationship that we want to have with the private sector, because when we create those pins and flashes and different products, a lot of times we're getting that information from the private sector, from private sector sharing information with us. And, a lot of times we would prefer that, companies and organizations share more than they think, because, a cyber attack that might have hit and been thwarted by your defenses, may be something that another company might not have the same level of defenses and could impact their environment. So, you know, if you see something, we'd love to see it. The other thing we can do when companies share information with us or share indicators or something that they saw in their network. You know, I used to work with a company that I had this type of relationship with, and they'd say, hey, you know, the other night, this IP address tried to log into our VPN. It was unsuccessful, but here's what they used. And, you know, I would go and check that information through some of my systems on the FBI side and other government databases that I had. And, you know, a lot of times I'd come back and say, all right, we don't have anything on that. Sometimes I'd be able to say, hey, you might want to watch that IP. You know, that's tied to a particular group. Here's some other indicators of compromise that we've identified that's related to that group. So we like to get involved early. We like to be there. We like to be on, you know, when you create your plans for an incident, you know, we would love that the FBI be on those plans so that we're contacted early rather than later.
Anyway, I know that the information sharing has really increased a whole lot over the past 5 years. So especially during the pandemic, a lot of private sector and private industry is really showing a willingness to share information on cyber attacks now also, which is a great thing because the bottom line, sharing information, a little bit of bad news with the folks is a lot better than having your name in the headlines for not being able to take all the steps that you needed to prevent a threat, right?
Well, Mike, I think that's what's key, right? Like when you share information, we shouldn't be selfish about it, right? It's like, well, something happened to me, I'm embarrassed, but if I share it, maybe we prevent follow-on attacks. So that's why
and you're not going to be quite as embarrassed as you would be if you don't share it,
right?
And it does happen, and we find that out. So definitely, that's great. Well, it actually is a good news story that's coming forward.
I'm
So-
really pleased with what we've done in the Office of the Inspector General with sharing the knowledge. Again, I had mentioned Inspector General Hall, one of the components of our audit program this year with identity and access management concerns things like network segmentation. And again, I used to maybe understand one of every 10 words that was said here, but now I'm getting to about half the words that people say in the solution. So it'd be better. But I didn't know what network segmentation was, but I was able to reach out to the Inspector General and you know, she was able to tell me, oh, it's sort of like that scene in Mission Impossible when Tom Cruise is hanging right and the sweat doesn't drip. And prior to this, I had a meeting with our Office of the Inspector General for the Department of Transportation. Every sign, every stop sign and roadway, there's a sticker on them in Florida that's giving us data.
Right.
What are they doing for identity and access management there? Some of the knowledge that they have that they can share about what risks go into that process and what controls certainly help those of us that are not as cyber savvy.
Great. We're going to come right back to you, as a matter of fact, because you know there's been a lot of cybersecurity challenges that's actually happened at state and local agencies that over the past couple of years, especially during the pandemic and our emergence from it. Okay. But it hasn't really been just cyber attacks, has it?
No, sorry, yeah, more than threats. And again, the Chief Inspector General is much better about communicating that really cybersecurity is a way of life, right? That it allows us to do the things that we need to do. I especially can't talk very much, as I was sharing with my wife that the special agent here was going to be on the panel with me, but she works for a local hospital in the HR section. So yeah, right. Y'all probably know which one, right? So we were she goes to a lot of FSU basketball games and baseball games with me. And so on Friday, had to be a good husband. And I had to go to a local Shakespeare play with her, right? Like you have to kind of give and take in a marriage, right? So, instead of driving separately, commuting the same way that day, she looks at her text messages from her boss. Hey, there was an issue. Don't log on to your computers yet. Someone says, well, you know, okay, we'll have a nice long breakfast today. We'll go down to the cafeteria at our hospital. So people are thinking, okay, you know, this could be a day, this could be an issue, right? It could be a long morning, and then we'll get back up and running. Two things that have impacted, you know, other things that have impacted them. That day, the card swipe did not work for that cafeteria. So if you needed medical care at that unnamed hospital that day, you had a lot of hungry nurses and doctors who
Right.
are carrying cash with them, right? And you probably don't want to deal with an angry nurse or doctor who's hangry or whatever, right? That's the best way. And then, like, again, separately, now that she's home because she can't do anything, she's bugging me a lot, right? So that's a real risk, right? That's a
Oh, I have a feeling you're gonna pay for that when you get home.
right, yeah, don't tell her I said it, right?
Too late.
Yeah, right. But again, yeah, cybersecurity really is a way of life. And what we do, I know elections, I know Inspector General Ulwitz, I think, is still here. He's the Inspector General for our Department of State, and what they do with having to secure elections and things like that. But cybersecurity, again, a couple of the things that I pulled, just in advance of this, that I saw some folks had some Delinea stuff on the tables there that they said something the other day that said 84% of respondents indicated they've experienced identity-related data breach recently. The average total cost of the data breach is $4.24 million. Cybercrime damages totaled $6 trillion globally, that it would be the third largest economy behind the United States and China. Expected to grow to about $10.5 trillion by 2025, more profitable than all major illegal drugs combined, larger than the damage inflicted from natural disasters. And again, everything that impacts your sort of way of life. So yeah, and of course the unique challenges that we have in the public sector, and adopting a single unified strategy across the multiple agencies can be very difficult, right? Even we talked about how proud we are trying to become more cyber resilient in our office, Inspector General. Last night, as I mentioned, the Chief Inspector General is doing training in Guam. She's made connections. She's like, let's invite them to the training. Well, they're 15 hours ahead. So when can I schedule training? Folks 15 hours ahead. So, so those sort of risks or whatever. And of course, also beyond just the breaches and the other risks, attracting talent to be able to do this. That again, budget and getting folks interested to want to be in the offices of Inspector General and the risks that we have there is of course a challenge for us and for any entity. But
although the good news there is it looks like you guys have got a plan. You're getting the training out there done, and you're getting some of the funding that's needed. That's going to encourage folks to stay with you, right?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding. That's good to do. Matthew, we're going to turn back to you. Okay, during a major cyber event, okay, what does FBI's victim engagement look like?
Sure. No, that's a great question. As I mentioned before, we'd ideally like to have already been engaged with the company before they become a victim. That just helps everything out. It allows them to have contacts with the FBI, so they know who to contact, who to call, and it typically helps the company know to contact us again early. This was the case with Colonial Pipeline, and because of our early engagement there, the FBI was able to work with other U.S. government counterparts, and we were able to get some of that money back. I believe all of the money back for Colonial Pipeline, if I recall correctly. Actually, the amount that we were able to get because of the fluctuation in Bitcoin, I think Colonial Pipeline has to submit an IRS form this year for what they made back.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So, when we're involved at a major cyber incident, companies have to realize, again, we're an investigative agency. We are there to collect evidence. We are looking to work side by side the network defenders who are trying to mitigate it. We are using their expertise about the network to let us know what's important, what's significant, what logs we should be looking at. If they can let us know something specific early, IOCs that they've identified. Again, this will help our agents go back, run those through our systems, see if there's information that we can pull back and provide to them to help them mitigate it further. As I mentioned before, in the case of Hive, for a little bit of time, we had the decryption keys. So if we had a victim contact us and say that they were impacted by Hive, we would go ahead and search that through our systems, identify that there was a field office working that case, reach out to them, get the information that they have that we could provide back with the victim. Some of the other things we do in the case of like serious Colonial Pipelines, Sony, Hafnium, we have a team of highly trained agents across the United States. Highly trained agents and professional staff, they comprise our cyber action team. So we can call this team in. Will go on site with the victim at the victim company. Victims will typically provide them access to certain logs and files to allow them to start forensically digging through that information, looking for artifacts and other information that, one will help our investigation and potential prosecution of an actor, but also help get some information to the network security and IT staff that are working on the mitigation strategy. Trying to think if there's anything else I have. I think that really covers a lot of our victim engagement. There's been a big push from cyber division, and I should know because I kind of worked on our policy on it before I came down here, of really being there, understanding what the victim's going through. So not being like a robotic, guy in a suit like I am today, but not your typical G-man. We want to be there and show empathy to victims. These network security defenders that are dealing with a major crisis, this is the worst day of their lives. And so, we want to go there, provide the, help that we can, try and get the information from them and get information back to them to help them, secure their networks. The other things the FBI is going to do is we're going to get our counterpart CISA involved, and CISA is going to help with some of the mitigation aspects. So where the FBI is investigation, CISA is helping with a lot of the mitigation and remedy efforts that those companies are going through.
Well, with this thought of mine, let's follow on with that. What is the recovery asset team, and how can they potentially help victims?
Sure. No, that's a great thing to bring up, and I'm glad you did. So the recovery asset team is a team that the FBI created back in 2018. This group, is everyone familiar with IC3? So it's the Internet Crimes Complaint Center. What the recovery asset team does is, as new complaints come in, they're looking for victims of fraudulent wire transfers, whether that's through business email compromise or other types of fraudulent online activity. They set up communication channels with US banks. So when this information comes in, they're quickly identifying the pertinent information about the recipient bank, where these funds have gone to. They're contacting those banks. They're getting those accounts frozen. And then they're reaching out to the local FBI field offices to work with the agents to get the victim to coordinate their bank and get that money back for them. To give you an idea on how successful the recovery asset team has been, in 2021, I have some statistics here, but they handled over 2,000 victim instances with over $400 million in lost funds. They were able to recover, by contacting the banks and getting this information over, $325 million.
Wow.
So that's a success rate of about 75% for funds coming back. I know just from experience locally, there's a victim that lost through a business email compromise close to $1 million. Because of the efforts of the recovery asset team and the quick actions by the agents that were in that area, they're going to be able to recover all of their money. So
That's amazing.
the one last plug that I will say with that is, it is imperative for the victim of one of these type of incidents to, again, report it quickly to ic3.gov. Get the pertinent information in there, specifically related to the bank accounts where the money has been sent to, because that's what they need to start this process of getting the funds frozen. Without that information, they're reaching out to us in the field to try and contact the company to get it. And, a lot of times, if the money is moved outside the United States, it's lost and out of our hands. So quickly report it.
Good information. Good information. Thanks for sharing that. So Brian, this one's going to be just for you. All right. So the massive migration to cloud and multi-cloud environments, as well as computing from the edge, to include the telecommuting, remote connected devices, and so forth, has basically fundamentally changed the way that we look at protecting our data. Citizens and staff connect and share data from everywhere. I mean, no longer do we have the precise defined physical architecture of on-site controlled networks. So does this migration necessitate moving to zero trust type architecture and to successfully secure the citizens' data?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. It's definitely one of my favorite topics is zero trust. So, zero trust is recognized as an imperative by many organizations from the White House, NIST, Department of Defense, commercial organizations like Microsoft, Okta, Google, you name it. I mean, it's very near and dear to our hearts. But we need to also understand what a zero trust architecture is, right? And I'm not going to sit here and give you a dissertation on it, but what we need to take away from here is it's not a silver bullet, right? It's not a product. A company says, hey, I'm going to sell you zero trust, run.
No, yeah.
That doesn't exist. But basically it's a target architecture. It's really a journey. How do we get there, right? And at its core, and Jason was kind of talking about it, it's policy driven, right? At the end of the day, we're trying to make decisions based off of signals that are happening within our infrastructure. The core principles that we need to be concerned with, again, kind of hit on it earlier, is assume breach. That's the first thing. You just got to assume it. Verify explicitly. And that's actually huge, right? Because that's like a paradigm shift away from what we're used to, right? Perimeter-based security models where we have a firewall on the edge, it comes in, okay, traffic's in, now we trust it. Think about physical security. Imagine we came in through the front door and somebody was checking our IDs. Okay, well now, because we're all in the same room, we all came through the same entry point, we would automatically in this room assume that we are all cleared. But are we? There's other entry points into this building, right? So, and even so, maybe I'm cleared to be in this room, but am I clear to see what's on that computer, right? And that's what, when we're talking about verify explicitly, that's what we're talking about. Is like, we don't take for granted that just because a prior decision was granted to say, yes, you have access, that you can continue to have access.
That's
right?
where least privilege comes in.
And then least privilege, that's the key tenet to another tenet, right? And all of us in IT are probably guilty of this, maybe now or in the past, right? We either have the quote unquote keys to the kingdom, or I like to call the janitor access, right? Like, what person has the most access in a building? Typically a janitor, right? So is there a reason to have that? No, but to do my job, I need certain privileges, right? Well, yes, sure. But you need it when you need it, not all the time. And that's what zero privilege is about, right? It's like, okay, Brian, you need to do admin things. We're going to elevate your account for this period of time. You do your thing and now you're gone. No more admin privileges. And what does that lead to? Well, if I get attacked, which IT people are very subject to getting attacked, the surface area of attack on my account has now been diminished, right? It's going to be much harder. Okay, threat actor has my account, but they can't do anything because they can't actually escalate their privileges, because hopefully we have some other processes that go with that do that. So other things, when we're talking about zero trust, we're talking about identities, endpoints, applications, network, data, infrastructure, right? So at the end of the day, it's when I list all those things out, that's a lot. And can you secure all those assets today? Probably not, but you can start somewhere. And, I would recommend identities, endpoints. Those are the key areas, but you have to move to everywhere in your state and really look at using platforms that connect signals across all these areas and have a way to actually correlate and connect those dots so that you can say, hey, yeah, the application, like we all check our mail, right? I checked my mail, I provided credentials that let me in, but wait, that's weird. Brian's checking his mail from Russia at 2, 3 in the morning local. I am a night owl, but from a business standpoint, I'm sure they're like, why is he checking mail from Russia at 3? Yeah, probably should deny that. Right. And that's what zero trust architecture is all about. So yes, we have to move that way. It is the way of the future. The things we used to think about with perimeter-based security, that's the past. We have to move forward.
All very good points. We've got just a couple of minutes left. I would say, though, to add on to that, we have to implement it without scaring the user or restricting the user's capability of doing their mission. And that's what's really important also. That's for another topic, though, another day. So, Jason, the last question is going to be yours. As a service model seems to be very successful for mission, budget, and security in today's IT ecosystem. So what does everything as a service encompass, and how would that support mission accomplishment and security of data for a state government agency, local, regional, government agency? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that really kind of comes down to the cloud first model, right? So the federal government and the DoD came out with their IT cloud first initiative, I think in 2011, right? And still working on that, right? And someone else brought this up before. How do you get to that cloud native model? And it's how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? You have
Right.
to take things in small steps.
Gotta get started.
And there's a ton of efficiencies around that, around putting everything in the cloud. There's all kinds of budget efficiencies. And I know we're running out of time, so won't necessarily go into that. But the idea is that once you have everything in the cloud, a lot of the security related efficiencies really come to the forefront, right? Not needing to worry about that security layer, only providing the services to your end users, right? Not worrying about securing everything under your service specifically, right? So I think that's a big thing, right? As far as mission, I mean, these cloud services are AWS, Google, Microsoft. These things are widely available. They're not going to be impacted by something like a hurricane. I'm from Charleston. We're a hurricane zone too. You're not going to be down if there's a hurricane, right? You're gonna have that availability, across the country, and you're going to be able to roll over. And I will call out one example, and I wanted to bring this up, and I know some people had some other examples here. And just joining Okta, one of the reference customer references that gets talked about is, and you can look this up, the Kansas Department of Labor. So when COVID happened, they had a huge spike in unemployment claims. It shot up dramatically. And what they found after a federally driven audit is that 90% of those were fraudulent, and they were coming from an international criminal syndicate, right? And the reason that happened is because they had a single factor authentication with no checks on where the user was coming from, no basic zero trust checks at all, right? They were being flooded. It actually brought the system down at one point, and they stopped paying out to citizens at one point. So this department implemented an adaptive MFA solution and conditional access to this website, and essentially within 2 weeks solved that problem.
Yep.
But ultimately, it was $1 billion in fraudulent claims, and 600 million were paid out, right, of taxpayer money. That's a referenceable case. You guys want to look that up? The Kansas Department of Labor, and just that small thing. And to me, I was a bit surprised that a state agency would be that impacted so quickly. But that's pretty dramatic, that one small zero trust change and it stopped that in its tracks. So
That's a classic, a great example. I mean, and again, everybody brought up, thank you so much, everybody. You bring up the idea, we've been covering it all day long, that there are two things to take away from this. Working together is partnerships, okay? Working together as one team, coming together when we need to, and interoperability, I think.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to our guests, Matthew Belovko, Stephen Henry, Brian Wablinger, and Jason Ruby. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Caracast, and be sure to listen to our other discussions. If you'd like more information on how Okta can assist your organization, please visit www.carasoft.com or email us at okta@carasoft.com. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.